When you think of any of James Cameron's most iconic lines,
I'll be back.
I'm the king of the world!
Hasta la vista, baby.
they have a lot in common. They're short, simple, quotable, and totally undistinguished and forgettable in themselves. They certainly wouldn't leap off the page if you were reading the screenplay. In contrast, you wouldn't need to see this Aaron Sorkin scene acted out and filmed for it to be striking.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers!
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
But that's not what Cameron, seen here, is trying to do. Unlike most screenwriters, he doesn't concern himself with writing independently impressive dialogue, because he's always thinking of the total cinematic vision he means to deliver. I'll Be Back is unforgettable because of what follows, because of what the Terminator's coming back actually entails. I'm the King of the World is unforgettable because it seems to express something about the extraordinary feat of visual imagination and technical filmmaking prowess we're experiencing, the resurrected grandeur of the Titanic. Hasta la vista, baby is a line that's basically nonsense as introduced by John Connor, but becomes thrilling in the jaw-dropping context of the freezing and shattering of the T-1000 and the humanization of the T-800. It's as if Cameron sat down and said, I'm going to grab a weird phrase nobody actually uses and turn it into one of the most quoted lines in movie history, because I'm James fucking Cameron, and my movies are just that good. I think James Cameron is a great writer.
But don't let that fool you. I'm really an okay guy.
Not passable, not good, great, brilliant.
Stop your grinning and drop your linen.
And I know some people are going to say, thank you, I agree. And some people are going to say, you're crazy. And this video is for both of those groups. Cameron haters are welcome.
Rose is displeased. What to do?
Let me try to change your perspective. I'm focusing on the question of writing here because it's the thing people always criticize Cameron for. There's overwhelming consensus that his audiovisual craftsmanship is impeccable, so the two negative things you'll always hear are that his stories are uninteresting or unoriginal, and that his dialogue is corny. This video is mostly about dialogue, so I won't address the first charge too much beyond briefly saying that I find it ridiculous. Avatar is just Pocahontas? Maybe my memory's fuzzy, but I don't think Pocahontas is about John Smith's identity fracturing under the pressure of living life in two bodies, one of which was grown artificially for his dead brother whose genes he shares, and the second body connecting him to a moon whose flora and fauna are all neurally interlinked into a kind of immunoresponsive mega-organism. The familiar love story is probably the third most important story in Avatar, just like the familiar love story is probably the third most important story in Titanic. Also, familiar and poorly executed are not the same thing. To the people who think Cameron's plots are tired or boring, all I have to say is this.
Well, we all see what we want to see. You have to look with better eyes than that.
So like I said at the start, Cameron's dialogue doesn't generally sparkle on the page. It doesn't draw attention to itself. But this isn't for lack of ability on Cameron's part. He's perfectly capable of writing a sharp witticism.
Hey, Vasquez. Have you ever been mistaken for a man?
No. Have you?
Or a hauntingly poetic image.
Children look like burnt paper. And then the blast wave hits them. And they fly apart like leaves.
Or a quietly elegant and understated exchange.
My mommy always said there were no monsters. Why did they tell little kids that?
Most of the time it's true.
It's because, as I've been saying, he always has in mind the total cinematic experience. Seemingly workmanlike dialogue will be invested with the qualities he wants it to have, become powerful and inevitable when it becomes part of a combined orchestral effect. Take this moment from Aliens, after the dropship the characters plan to escape on comes crashing down when an alien hiding on board eviscerates both pilots.
That's just fucking great, man! Now what the fuck are we supposed to do? We're some real pretty shit now, man!
You finished?
The pathetic humor of Hudson's outcry and the heroic stoicism of Hicks's reprimand both emerge so strongly because of Cameron's spectacular handling of the gut punch they're reacting to. In the context of the terror and devastation Cameron has just delivered, Hudson's response is infinitely relatable, and Hicks's is infinitely desirable. But since the integrated effect is everything in Cameron's movies, this does render his dialogue susceptible to cherry-picking when critics want to tear into him. Sometimes, they might not even cherry-pick an entire line, but just a single word. That's right, baby, it's time to talk about unobtainium. It honestly boggles my mind how many people seem to think chortling about unobtainium is the coup de grace in any discussion of Cameron, the irrefutable proof that he is a bad writer and Avatar is a bad movie. If you are one of those people, I have news for you.
It's a joke. He's not serious. There's a big difference, guys. Context matters.
The joke is that unobtainium is a term sometimes used by engineers to refer to an ideal material that is unavailable or non-existent. But in the science fiction world of Avatar, in the alternate reality that James Cameron has created for the big screen, anything Cameron can dream up can exist. The hypothetical has become actual. The unobtainable has become obtainable. And in this respect, while it is a playful acknowledgement of the kind of story we're watching, there's also something quite serious about the line. It's a subtle declaration of the limitlessness of the human imagination. And if you're not on board with Cameron's imagination, it's a get-on or get-off moment. It's self-aware without being ironic or self-deprecating. And that's another of Cameron's great skills. The ability to be funny without winking. The ability to marry humor and sincerity. And that, in turn, brings me to my next subject.
She was telling the truth, wasn't she, Harry? How interesting.
James Cameron is so sincere, he doesn't even try to write jokes. James Cameron is so sincere, he doesn't even know what a joke is. And guess what? His movies are funny as hell. You hear that? Obviously, I'm being slightly facetious, but what I'm getting at is that Cameron's jokes tend to emerge organically from the story and the characters.
This little girl survived longer than that with no weapons and no training.
Why don't you put her in charge?
The reason the jokes in most modern blockbusters are so god-awful is that they feel like painfully forced attempts to meet artificial joke quotas. Each one feels like an insert joke here slapped onto an arbitrary timestamp. It's there because the formula demands it, not because the story calls for it. Whereas the vast majority of the funny bits of dialogue in Cameron movies don't consist of a character saying something intrinsically witty or funny, and don't feel like planned comic relief at all. They might consist of a sincere reaction to another character's mismatched idiom.
Oh my God.
I caught one back there.
You mean you got shot?
Or an indignant retort to another character's mismatched priorities.
I say we take off and nuke the entire site for Morbid.
This installation has a substantial dollar value attached to it.
They can bill me.
Or a sincere reply to another character's naive question.
Can you even see anything?
I see everything.
Or a sincere and indignant retort to another character's naive assumption that is as frightening as it is funny.
Titanic will founder. But this ship can't sink.
She's made of iron, sir. I assure you, she can.
For me, these comic moments really epitomize one aspect of Cameron's transparent virtuosity as a writer, because they're nice punchy lines that hardly feel written at all. This quality of unwritten organicism is taken to the next level in my favorite Cameron one-liner, which I would have included in the opening seconds of this video if not for the fact that it contains a forbidden word. meaning if I ever got enough subscribers to monetize my channel, YouTube still wouldn't have let me get ad revenue from this video. So now, at last, Ripley's famous challenge to the alien queen.
Get away from her, you bitch!
This is about as crude and naturalistic a piece of dialogue as you could give Ripley in this moment. But Cameron has orchestrated things such that it's not just a thrilling and climactic moment within the scene, teed up by the slow rising door, the dramatic backlighting and shadows, and the slow walk-in with those thumping power loader feet into the tight close-up. It's the culminating line of the entire film. Cameron took the original Alien's psychological explorations of motherhood and violation and pushed them into the realm of sociology, probing received ideas about militarism, masculinity, and the gendered forms of heroism and authority.
It's a rescue mission. You'll love it. There's some juicy colonist daughters we have to rescue from their virginity. Favorite duty.
Dumbass colonists.
Ripley is caught between the familiar misogyny and machismo of a patriarchal human culture and the unfamiliar horror of a matriarchal alien culture built on violating and impregnating other organisms.
Looks like love at first sight to me.
When Ripley marches out to protect her newfound surrogate daughter from the grotesque mother of corruption in a single combat.
Get away from her, you bitch!
It's a natural, instinctive response that miraculously distills the entire movie into a single line. But what about the big lines that don't hit like that? There are definitely some cheesy lines in every Cameron movie, but I like to think they're a natural part of our ride with him on the Sincerity Express. Take this one from Avatar.
Sometimes your whole life boils down to one insane move.
It's pretty damn corny, but you know what? It's very entertaining, and it's true to the jarhead mentality of the character who says it, and I love it. And I love that Cameron so clearly has fun when writing and filming his movies. You can groan at his sillier lines if you want, but what you're groaning at is still the distinctive flavor and personality of a genuine filmmaker. So many big-budget movies today feel utterly impersonal and lifeless because they are. They're written by committee, assembled according to studio blueprints, engineered and screen-tested into the most milquetoast, warmed-over bowls of risk aversion imaginable, and the individual artist is irretrievably lost. Cameron's films are unmistakably his from top to bottom, and his palpable love of what he is doing translates time and again into the love he receives back from audiences around the globe. A lot of James Cameron's most inspired lines are exceptional in ways that are far from obvious. Take this one from Aliens.
Work fast!
Cover your eyes, Newt. Don't look at the light.
Why is this a great line? It's totally mundane and forgettable. It doesn't advance plot or character at all. But what it does do is subtly inject a powerful dose of reality into the scene. Cameron doesn't just tell stories, he creates worlds, and he has a remarkable ability to hold every element of those worlds in his mind at all times. We watch the welding and think, the aliens are coming, hurry up, hurry up. Meanwhile, Cameron is thinking, this is a real room full of real people with a real welding torch. It's dangerous to look directly at the flames of welding torches, and there's a small child in this room who might not know that. And there's an adult in the room who has taken that child under her protection, who knows that a child might not know that, and would have the cognizance to tell her to cover her eyes. And this is why James Cameron is a fucking genius. Because unlike 99% of filmmakers, he has the imagination to go those extra few inches that make all the difference in convincing his viewers, even subconsciously, that the characters in the world he has created really exist. It's like that moment in Titanic where the ship is broken and the back half is sticking up out of the water, about to be pulled down into it, and Cameron cuts away from Rose and Jack clinging to the railing and the other people on deck to a shot with no people in it inside the ship to show us the dishes sliding out of their cubbies and shattering. Who but Cameron would have so thoroughly imagined the world of the film, the space and arrangement and contents of the Titanic, to be thinking about the dishes at such a moment? But he does. And what he gives us by cutting to them is genuinely one of the most panic-inducing, viscerally impactful shots in the movie. There's something uniquely dizzying and upsetting about gravity pulling the dishes toward us, which is why shooting the dishes almost head-on, rather than jumping straight to the canted angle conveying the ship's orientation, was absolutely the right decision. And the cacophonous shattering of so many neatly stacked dishes condenses into a single image the dissolution of order, the upending of upper-class security, and the mass destruction occasioned by the sinking. Because he sees dialogue as nothing special in itself, as just one more filmmaking element, one more tool or building block the writer-director has at his disposal, James Cameron excels at writing lines that appear to be doing not much of anything, while more subtly doing something else. Here's one from Aliens.
2 minutes, people! Get hot! Somebody wake up Hicks.
It seems like a simple, basically unnecessary gag, another lightly comic moment for the sergeant, but it's actually a clever bit of character development. The important thing it's establishing, without making it at all obvious, is that Hicks is supremely cool-headed, so much so that he fell asleep during the intense descent of the dropship. To cover his tracks, Cameron doesn't even cut back to Hicks at all after the sergeant says this. But the seed has been planted that will bear fruit later when everything goes to shit and Hicks rises to the occasion and holds things together with Ripley. Now take this exchange between Hicks and Ripley as they race to free Newt from under the grating.
Hicks!
I know!
Hurry!
I know!
I mean it!
At a glance, this dialogue seems entirely superfluous. We know what the beeping means. Ripley knows. Hicks knows. She knows he knows. He tells her that he knows. Aliens coming, they have to hurry. And yet, I want it there. It doesn't matter that the exchange conveys zero new information. The scene would be worse without it. Cameron uses dialogue here as a structural, sonic element, not just a linguistic element. The words themselves don't really matter, but they add an extra dimension of accelerando and crescendo, quickening the pace and cranking up the volume, just to draw the tension of the moment even tauter. And on that note, remember the end of Titanic when Rose just repeats "come back" in a broken voice?
Come back. Come back. Come back.
By repeating the two words over and over, they almost stop signifying anything because we're not getting any new information from them. They become pure sound. Until we realize that they're not. And we are getting new information because her object of address has shifted, and she's no longer saying "come back" to Jack, she's saying it to the lifeboat.
Come back. Come back.
It's impossible to say at what point her plea shifts from Jack to the boat, at what point her wish to keep someone else alive transmutes into her own renewed will to live. And it's probably as much of a mystery to Rose as it is to us. The beautiful paradox at the heart of this movie is how falling from the height of privilege into the depths of tragedy allows someone who was ready to end it all to find in herself the determination to survive and flourish. And it's all here, concentrated in this tiny moment. I saw Titanic in the theater a week or so ago, and it had been so long I had completely forgotten about this bit. And when she swam for that whistle, I thought, my God, moments like this are what I watch James Cameron movies for. It's pure cinematic magic. Sincerity is so central to Cameron's approach and the resulting aura his films have that I don't think it's going too far to speculate that discomfort with sincerity lies at the root of a lot of the hate he gets. Many people like to complain whenever an artist quote-unquote has an agenda, and Cameron very clearly has one. But for me, this is one of the things that marks him out among the filmmakers with mass appeal as a serious artist. In Cameron's case, having an agenda means having the courage to craft popular art with a distinct and uncompromising point of view, art that openly espouses particular values and rejects others. While aiming to reach the broadest possible audience, he never waffles on what he believes for fear of alienating any given block of viewers. The basics of what Cameron cares about are stated easily enough. He's deeply troubled by nuclear weapons, the state of the environment, and the growth of the military-industrial complex. Fascinated by the ocean, complex machinery, and the possible forms of non-human intelligent life. Moved by relationships between husbands and wives and between parents and children. That pretty much sums up his fundamental interests, which have remained consistent for decades across all his films. And he tackles them by writing stories that are, in some key respects, pretty simple. Even with the slightly mind-bending time travel stuff, the plot of Terminator 2 is very uncluttered and legible. Compare it to The Rocketeer from the same year. Have you seen The Rocketeer? The plot of that movie is insanely dense and convoluted, far more than T2, and it's a Disney movie. But that doesn't mean that in the final analysis, T2 is a simpler movie with fewer ideas. It's not. But Cameron isn't a short story writer, he's a filmmaker, and his most stimulating thoughts aren't in his scripts, they're in what he actually puts on the screen. The T-1000 isn't just a great movie monster, it's an unbelievable idea, and that idea is conveyed through what Cameron shows us, realizing to its fullest extent this nightmare of technology to absorb and replicate what we've always thought of as two of the chiefest and strongest markers of human identity, voice and face. The T-1000 stands as a dark prophecy of the annihilation of the human that has become only more unsettling in our era of rapidly evolving deepfakes. And its shape-shifting death throes are among the most uncanny and thought-provoking things I've seen in an action movie. And this, ultimately, is why I love James Cameron. When I go to one of his movies, I know that he is going to show me something that I have never seen before and that I will never forget. You know you're doing something right when the folks making their own masterpiece over at Nintendo watched your least popular movie and said, "Oh, we gotta do that." Cameron belongs to the class of people who see things that don't exist and refuse to rest until they have willed them into the world. For a name-brand blockbuster filmmaker, Cameron has an astonishingly consistent, immersive, and complete vision of existence. And to share in his vision is to share in something tragic and beautiful and funny and terrifying and silly and overflowing with love for human life. Whatever we've been watching before, just step into a Cameron movie, and as the lights go down, it's as if he turns and asks us,
"So you want to go to a real party?"